Hello and welcome to Big Speak. I am Brigadier Rakesh Bhatia, and today we have my partner, Brigadier P.S. Gotra, with us. Welcome to the show, Brigadier Gotra.
Thank you, Brigadier Bhatia.
Let's not get into formalities now. I will address you the way I address you, Gotra, and you can address me as Bhatia. Let's start today's episode, and today we'll talk about General Giap's biography. Over to you for today's episode, Gotra.
Okay. Today's presentation we will be only discussing about the early life of General Giap. General Ho Nguyen Giap is regarded as one of the greatest military strategists ever of Vietnam because with an ill-equipped army, he was able to defeat the armies of two well-trained armies of the Western nations. He was born in 1912 in the village Ensa in Quang Binh province. He lived in the general area between Hue and Dong Hue until 1930. This is a photograph which shows the house in which he lived.
I will just clarify here, Gotra, the two armies, well-trained army that you have mentioned, I think you are referring to France and subsequently the USA, what is called the First and the Second Indo-Chinese War. Is it correct?
Exactly.
Let's go ahead.
When he was about 12 years old, he was sent to Hue in the school called Lice National School. This school was providing both traditional and modern education. And these luminaries like Dinh Dam, Ho Chi Minh, and Pham Van Dong had also studied in this school.
These three names that you have just mentioned, they have had a profound effect in Vietnam and are very well known figures who have actually, written, if I may say, history of Vietnam. I would request you to please tell us about these three gentlemen, Lien Dam, Ho Chi Minh, and Pham Van Dong.
Yeah. Dinh Dam was the controversial head of the government of South Vietnam, which they later on defeated. Ho Chi Minh was the boss of General Giap, and he headed the government of North Vietnam also. He was VMAN commander also. Then Pham Van Dong was the prime minister of North Vietnam. So very big people, big names in the history of Vietnam. When he was at Hue, General Giap had joined the first underground national group, that is Tan Weight group. There he was obsessed with pushing out foreigners from Vietnam. At that time, French were ruling the Vietnam in this area. As a student, he headed a demonstration. As a result, he was arrested by the French police. He was awarded about 3 years of sentence, but due to his good conduct, he was released earlier. After the prison, he learned that it is better to conceal your sentiment and hatred for the French. And in fact, General Giap was also called snow-covered volcano because of his ability to conceal the hatred. By 1930, Giap had left Tan Weight group, which he had joined earlier, and he had joined the Communist Party. After that, he moved to Hanoi for his undergraduate studies. It is there that he met his future wife, who was the daughter of his college professor, and he later married her in 1938. Giap was an outstanding student. One of his teachers, while evacuating from Hanoi, took only one dossier of a student, and that was of Giap's. And that had the papers written by Giap, that kind of confidence that his teacher had on him. Some writers say that he received law degree in 1937, but the others say no, it is not that way. But we very well know that he studied political economics in 1938. Of course, that year only he got married. While at Hanoi, he got so busy with the political activities and writing articles that he was not able to continue with his studies. And he became for his livelihood, he became a history teacher at the Thong Long private school in Hanoi. That is the time he got interested in the history, especially the history regarding Adolf Hitler. And it is believed at that time he was studying the battles of Hitler, and he was studying the operations carried out. In fact, he used to move around like Hitler also. Some people say that he copied Hitler started copying at that time only. Uh, so that is the time he got involved into the military topics. By this time, he was a staunch Marxist and a very staunch Vietnamese nationalist. But all this while, the Communist Party was allowing him to, on his own, carry out and further enhance his education and mental development.
But here I will intervene, Gotra. This, what you have stated, is a very, very deadly combination. Adolf Hitler, Marxist, and nationalist. No, probably it was the reaction of the colonial culture that was existing at that particular time, because the communism basically came into being against the imperialism, and
Ex-
France, who were occupying Vietnam, was basically imperialism. They were taking out all the raw material and then using Vietnam as their market, like any other imperialist has come. So that is the reason that he developed that acumen as a military as well as political leader.
Exactly. That that conditions in Vietnam made him so in such a way that changed his mental framework, the conditions basically. By 1939, Giap had reached the top leadership of Communist Party in Vietnam. To say the other top leaders were Dong Trong Chin, Ho Chi Minh, and to reach at that level, and while he was only in 20s,
Yeah.
that shows his leadership qualities. And of course, he had not even met Ho Chi Minh till that time. So that is the kind of involvement in the party activities he had.
And
Uh,
for our viewers, sorry, interrupting, for our viewers, Ho Chi Minh considered himself to be, contemporary and better than Mao. So that was the level of Ho Chi Minh. And Jab at that time had not even met him, despite that he had no godfather. It was on his pure merit that he became one of the top leaders of the Vietnamese Communist Party.
exactly. Uh, Due to some happenings in the French Europe, the French, that is the Germany and the Russia, all those things, we will not get into that. The French banned the Communist Party both at home and also in all its territories. Now, as a result, arrest warrants were issued against all the top leaders of the Communist Party. That made Giap flee from Hanoi. Giap and his wife, they fled from Hanoi to central Vietnam. And unfortunately, in the city of Vinh, his wife and her sister, they got arrested. Both were tried. His wife was given imprisonment for life, and her sister was sentenced to death. At this time, Giap escaped from central Vietnam also, and in May 1940, he went to South China. Now, Giap's wife died in prison in 1943, and till later time, Giap believed that her death was due to the maltreatment by the French in the prison. In China, the communists there, they gave a good reception to Giap and the other person who had gone with him. And next month, he met Ho Chi Minh there in Kunming. They spent about a week together, and a lot of things were discussed in during that time. Probably Giap received all the instructions to set the future path they have to take for the country, that is Vietnam. Ho Chi Minh, who was mighty impressed with the capabilities of Giap, but he did not involve him totally. He asked Giap to continue with his schooling in political matters and the military techniques. Next whole year, Giap was training and visiting various places in China. He went to the political and the guerrilla warfare schools in China. Uh, that is the time he was also training the people who had gone from Vietnam, the Vietnamese there in China, in the guerrilla warfare.
Yeah, I would like to add here. So, see, even China and especially Maoist Communist Party of China was also undergoing lot of changes at that particular time. They were developing their concepts of guerrilla warfare and mobile warfare, which has been covered in the previous episode in the evolution of PLA. So this is matching with that time when Jap was in China, learning on ground the finer points of guerrilla warfare, which he later used twice, once against the French and subsequently against the US in the Second Indochina War.
Yes, it was a good place to learn things. Now here, uh, the Jap received lessons in military techniques from Ho, and he also had trained because Ho had trained in Moscow for several years, and Ho Ho Chi Minh planned that a partnership will develop between him and Giap, similar to the one which Mao Zedong and Chu Te had in China. Giap met Mao also during that time in 1941 in North China, and he was mighty impressed with Mao. He also had read the treatise written by Mao, The Strategic Problem, in 1938. Giap had also used the other books written by Mao, that is the struggle of the Chin Kansan Mountains and the guerrilla warfare in 1937. And he later used these as guides for furthering his military aims. In the late 1942, Giap met, Giap met with the other Vietnam leaders in Guangxi in China and discussed the future plans for the Vietnam. Now, with Vietnam,
Before we proceed, Gotra, please explain for our viewers Vietnam, because this is the first time this term is came. What is Vietnam?
you see, Vietnam was a league of for the independence of Vietnam, which was formed by Ho Chi Minh to concentrate the efforts to throw out the French and Japanese from Vietnam. So this was a sort of concentration of. He was heading it. Giap became its military leader. It was made in May 1941. Now, at that meeting, it was decided that they will follow the communism followed by Mao. That is, their revolution will be based on the rural population, unlike the Russian communism, which was based on the urban
Urban.
population, the factory workers and all, because it was identical to the conditions which were there in Vietnam.
China.
This also showed that the confidence they had on Mao's doctrine.
Yeah.
Now, at that time, Ho Chi Minh was imprisoned by the nationalist Chinese.
This was very
And
surprising move. On one side, they had given refuge to him, and then the nationalist Chinese arrested him. Okay, the communists gave them refuge, and okay, yeah, I got confused.
okay, you earlier also informed us that during that time, the China also was undergoing a lot of turmoil. There was a struggle between the communists and the nationalist Chinese. The communists were under the Mao Zedong, and the Chinese were under the Chiang Kai-shek. And that struggle, Ho Chi Minh approached the nationalists for help. But because he had the left leanings, Chiang Kai-shek arrested him, and he was in the prison for about 18 months. Uh, in his absence, Pham Van Dong took over the political leadership of the Viet Minh. Now, during this period, as you said, this was a good time for Giap to learn the things. Giap had organized the youth into shock groups, which acted as propaganda teams and guerrilla platoons. And by 1943, these platoons established good control over most of the provinces along the Sino-Vietnamese border. If you had seen the terrain map, it was a tough terrain, so it became difficult for the French to control that area. However, in 1944, French launched operations against these people or overall Viet Minh people, and many guerrillas and the Viet Minh cadres were arrested. They also, for the to have a better control, they also started shifting the population to some controllable areas. Now, at this time, we see how Ziap dealt with the thing. Rather than going head on against the French military, he or enforcing or strengthening his guerrilla activities, he resorted to more of the propaganda teams and those type of activities. This helped in increasing the will of the Vietnamese people against the French, which as a result helped in the uh, later later giving more strength to the military activities. So
I would like to add here that when we talk about propaganda, as far as communists are concerned, communists consider propaganda as a very essential tool. And this propaganda is against both own population as well as against the enemy troops and enemy population. Own population because they want to win over the sympathy and the support of the peasants and the villagers, because they feel that a gorilla should move around like a fish swims in water. Seamlessly they should go, and that will happen only if the population is with them. So this is the propaganda against own personal. Like I said, communists don't consider propaganda as a negative. It doesn't have a negative connotation. Similarly, when it is against the enemy, it is to degrade the capability of the enemy to fight. So this was exactly what Mao had done in China against the nationalists. He was that time considered as the enemies, and even against the Japanese. But with his own countrymen, he was extremely courteous, and to the extent that he used to also help them. Aim was because the recruitment for the fighters was supposed to come from the locals only.
Yeah. So
So
that is
this
the,
is, I thought I will add.
yeah, great. So this was a period when which allowed Giap to experiment. Firstly, the terrain was such that he could, and there were sanctuaries available across the border, and then the enemy was very weak in these areas, so he could experiment with things. Only enemy in these areas was the French, and the Japanese were not much interested in this area. So this was the time when he experimented with his various types of tactics and his strategies. Because of this propaganda activities, Giap was able to popularize the and get the support of people throughout the country. So he had spread the communist cells throughout the length of the Vietnam. At this time, so what happened was in Europe, because of the Germany's action, the north and west part of France was under the control of Germany. In 1944, because of the Allies' help, this part got liberated. At that time, the Giap and his party, that VMAN, could assess that very soon the Japanese will be interested and they will come after the French in Vietnam. So at that time, and they also saw that the Japanese will also not be able to sustain much in in Vietnam. So at that time, Giap decided that they should start for the guerrilla warfare to throw away both the Japanese and the French. And he started preparing for it also. However, Ho Chi Minh came back after his release and he did not like the idea of that. And, and that was the time he was reprimanded also by Ho Chi Minh. But he was able to recover his position very soon. This much for today. Campaigns we will start again separately. Anything,
Thank you
Ashish?
very much, Gotra. I think it was an excellent roundup of the first episode on Jal Zap. And I'll request the viewers to please go through all these terms are very important. I keep insisting on terms. Whatever Brigadier Gotra, the terms that he has used, this has been covered in the previous episode. So I would request our viewers to please like, share, and subscribe. With this, I wish you good luck, keep working hard, and all the best for your upcoming exam.